Joe Willie Namath showed up at the cable show one time. I think it had to do with sports and maybe senior sports and maybe I guess sports that some of the older clips. And so they had this channel out there, and I guess he was there paid to promote it. So he was standing there just around his booth, and so I headed over there. And I started talking to him, and I said, I kind of want to talk about. For those who may not remember who Joe Namath was as a player.
In the early 1960s, Joe Namath, Alabama's quarterback, seemed as much made for movie stardom as for football.
You know, Alabama's a real conservative state, and old farm boys back in that days with crew cuts, and he had this kind of swarthy, handsome movie star look, and he was different, to say the least.
We got this skinny kid from Beaver Falls as our quarterback, and it's obvious real quick that he was going to be exceptional.
When he came to Alabama, he could run, he could jump, dunk a basketball. See, and that's unheard of, really, back in those times. So he was just a great athlete.
Namath had a turbulent career at Alabama. Paul Bear Bryant suspended his star quarterback for the final 2 games of his junior season.
I think he was riding down the road by the sorority row, and they rode up on the lawn of one of the sorority houses, and they had just got through sodding that lawn. That's probably where he got in trouble, and Coach Bryant kind of disciplined for that.
Back the following season as a senior starter, Namath tore up his knee in the 4th game of the season. His Alabama career appeared to be in jeopardy. Despite losing Namath, Alabama rolled to a perfect 10-0 season. The Crimson Tide accepted a bid to play Texas in the Orange Bowl on New Year's 1965. The first game ever to be played and televised at night.
NBC's decision to air the 1965 Orange Bowl game in prime time was a milestone in sports television history. It predated the Super Bowl, and in fact, there hadn't even been a nighttime World Series baseball game up to that time.
And they had a record audience and a record crowd. Fortunately, they picked maybe one of the greatest matchups in history.
You had Bear Bryant on one sideline and Darrell Royal on the other, and here they were competing in a classic, which that game truly was.
Namath's knee was so heavily taped, he was deemed immobile and unready to play.
He always prepared to play, but I don't think he really expected to play. If something happened, then he would go in and be ready to play.
Hi, everyone, and a very pleasant welcome to Miami for the playing of the 31st Orange Bowl game. The Crimson Tide of Paul Bear Bryant, the #1 college team in the land, against Coach Darrell Royals, Texas Longhorns, the team that was #1 last year and #4 this season.
Steve Sloan, who finished the season at quarterback for Alabama, started the game.
And they started the reserve quarterback, and we were blitzing them with success, handling it real well.
Texas scored twice on Alabama in the first 20 minutes of play to take a 14-0 lead.
The 30, the 20, the 10, and he's over!
Alabama was a couple of touchdowns behind and looking woeful.
Looking to throw, great protection. That's a man, left at the 15, the 10, the 5, into the end zone!
Hoping to rally the Tide in the second quarter, Bear took a chance on his hobbled star.
Joe Namath, the great quarterback of the University of Alabama.
Sometimes you bring in somebody else, you get a big lift. That gave the team a really big lift. Of course, you can bring somebody in with that talent. You know, that it's nice to have a backup with that type of ability.
Namath entered the game. He drove the Crimson Tide 87 yards and 14 plays for a touchdown that cut the Longhorns' lead in half.
Every time we'd blitz, he'd dump it to somebody. We'd blitz again, he'd dump it to somebody. It looked like they were going to score every damn play.
Namath put the Tide in motion. In the third quarter, he rifled a 20-yard touchdown pass to flanker Ray Perkins, cutting the Longhorns' lead to 21-14.
About
think we were ready to and confident until the last bell rung that we were going to pull it out.
Down by 4 in the fourth quarter, Namath connected on a series of passes and drove his team to the 6-yard line for first and goal. Fullback Steve Bowman hit the Texas line 3 straight times.
Doesn't look like he made it. A fourth down and a yard to go.
Joe came to the sideline to find out what play we wanted to run, and nobody had a real good answer. And then finally he said, well, I'll just take it in.
Joe Namath is trying the quarterback sneak. Did he get it over there? No signal as yet. He's right on the goal line.
Texas had this great middle linebacker named Tommy Novus, and he anticipated what Joe was going to do, so as Joe began to take his vault over the line, Tommy was doing the same thing.
And our Texas man says no, our Alabama man is nodding his head yes.
He wound up in the end zone and said at the time that one of the officials called it a touchdown, but the referee, quote, overruled.
There has been no signal. It is not a touchdown. Texas has that football on a brilliant goal line stand.
Well, it's very close. You know, it could have been called either way. There's no doubt about it, and I've told people that. I personally did not think his initial surge made it across. Joe was crawling on the elbows and stuff, but we feel like we stopped him.
We claimed he missed it by about like that.
Namath's brilliant comeback had fallen short. But the 21-17 Texas upset win over Alabama will long be remembered as the night that both Joe Namath and the Orange Bowl hit the big time.
The 1964 championship, where Arkansas went undefeated. They beat Texas that year, of course, at Austin, and then came back and beat Nebraska in the Cotton Bowl. Well, in '64, they declared the national champion before the bowl games, which is, you wouldn't see that ever happening today, now the national playoff. But at that time, they had declared Alabama to be the national champion. But they had to play Texas, which had a good team. It was like number 3, so if Texas hadn't beat Arkansas, or Arkansas hadn't beat Texas, they would probably been in running to beat national championship. But when Arkansas beat Nebraska earlier that day, it was going to be whether Alabama could kind of go undefeated with Joe Namath as the quarterback and just kind of put a nail in as far as being a national championship. Well, the game was one of those games is pretty much dominated early on by Texas, and as he went on through the game, Alabama kept coming back and had several chances toward the end to win. And that was kind of the discussion I had with Joe Namath, was that since they had not won, and I was describing the game, what I remembered of it, and he would have to correct me at times because he was being very polite because he was there in a sales marketing mode, so he wasn't real confrontational, but he was appreciating the banter with the Arkansas fan, and you knew that he wasn't going to change what his thoughts were. And we reflected on the fact that the '64 and how had changed, and now Alabama would not have been considered to be national champions of '64 since they got beat in the January Orange Bowl. But he said, well, that's the way it was then, and he pretty well was sticking to his guns. But the fun fact, I guess, of that in their conversation was that he wanted to make sure that I understood that he followed the Razorbacks. He watched most every game they played, and that was because he and the head coach at that time were good friends when they were at Alabama. Of course, that's Danny Ford, and Danny Ford did well at Arkansas. You could tell he did watch. He wasn't just throwing that out there, but he did watch. And we, I had an appreciation of what he said, and it was somewhat humorous. I mean, we started drawing a crowd because everybody wanted to kind of listen in, and but just the two of us had that conversation, which was real interesting. But that was one of the things that I had as far as celebrity. Another celebrity I met, again, this was a little later, I guess toward the end of the 90s, when Brandon Burlsworth had been tragically killed in a car wreck. And of course, he had been at the University of Arkansas and is a walk-on. His history is there, and the award, trophy, and everything out there. I've kind of talked about that in the past, and had really a podcast at one time with his brother, and we had a good conversation about that.
And here's Marty Burlsworth at the Burlsworth Foundation.
You know, he wasn't really well received because he's a walk-on. I mean, that's just normal. It's not going to be unusual, but, you know, obviously in sports, it's all about building a team. So
that's right. Yeah, and he had a coaching change after his first year, position coach.
Yeah.
So I remember talking to him on the phone. He said, well, my coach is gone, and he kind of sort of won him over.
Yeah.
So now what I did, and I said, well, you do it again. And then that ended up being Coach Mike Bender, who was the best thing for him. You know, so Coach Bender came in, was just the perfect fit for Brandon. And so, you know, worked hard all those years, and then you know, had a great college career, would have had a great pro career. And I feel like right now, I mean, just personally, he should be in the College Football Hall of Fame. He's been nominated several times, you know, first team All-Americans criteria for that. And I felt like if he would have got to continue playing in the NFL, that, you know, that
the College Hall of Fame, it should still be there. I know in that year, later on that year, I was at a cable convention, and just coincidentally, you know, I came across the Peyton Manning and his dad there, and Archie, and of course I mentioned I was from Harrison, and that was really you know, it just kind of brought tears because he was just a year or so in there in Indianapolis, and boy, he was really looking forward to that opportunity because he knew, you know, what the talent was there. And I thought, well, you know, those things as you go along and what you see and what you get the feedback on, it's just really pretty amazing. So I thought, you know, that's just things that I've noticed, and I know you've kind of gone through that thing, and I know you've kind of since then. I don't know how soon it was after that, but you started the foundation, and
we.
Every time I turn on the TV, Peyton Manning is looking right at me. He's even dragged in his brother and his dad. It can't be that he needs the money. He's already proven to the world that he's so funny. So why does he keep making all these ads? He's an Indianapolis Colt, first and foremost, not a spokesman or a TV host. Instead of being on the set for days and days and days, he ought to be watching film.
You know what had been done with the foundation, and so, you know, I won't go back